Hey everyone, I wanted to go over the new and exciting news that we have not just for Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, but also Monster Hunter in general, since Capcom just recently reported their fiscal sales report for the third quarter of 2022, and once again they are reporting that they are having massive success with base Rise and Sunbreak. Usually this is something that I've covered in the past, and it's all well and good. This just means that the franchise is healthy, is getting sales, and people are excited to continue to play. However, I think the most interesting part of this specific report is the implications that they are suggesting that they're going to have record-breaking sales, not just for fiscal 2022, which ends in April, basically March 30th, so basically April, but also heading into fiscal 2023, suggesting that another massive flagship game is getting ready to release. And if you have been paying attention to the rumors, you know that the next Monster Hunter game is pretty much ready to be revealed later this year. So in this video, we're going to be trying to going over just exactly what Capcom is planning. So first and foremost, I'm going to be leaving a link in the description below for their official fiscal reports. There's a lot of numbers there. I'm not necessarily going to dig through all of that. Most of it is irrelevant specifically for this video, so we're not necessarily going to get into too much of the nitty-gritty of it. They do specifically confirm that Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak has surpassed north of 5 million units sold as of January 18th of 2023. So by the time that you're watching this video, this has been almost 2 weeks ago by now, like basically what the sales report that they are making. And essentially the first biggest takeaway that they say here in their fiscal report is that they're going to have record-breaking sales for all of their games for fiscal 2022. Now essentially what they're saying here is that within all of January, February, and March, every fiscal year is divided up into 4 quarters, and each quarter is 3 months. So essentially, by March 30th, they're going to have sold the record-breaking most amount of games sold in any year ever in the history of Capcom, which is a really big kind of takeaway that they're trying to project. Obviously, we know that Resident Evil 4 Remake is set to release on March 24th. That is going to be a big kind of qualifier, big flagship game. We know that Resident Evil, regardless of what you may think of the franchise or most recent releases, is still the biggest Capcom game ever. You should be seeing one of those images on the screen right now where Resident Evil has sold north of 135 million units combined. Pretty much the franchise is the most healthiest that has ever been, and Capcom is going to continue to make money off of it. Monster Hunter is with 90 million copies. That includes all of the DS, Vita games, of course World, Iceborne, and now of course Rise and Sunbreak. Street Fighter, interestingly enough, is third with 49 million copies, and then subsequently Mega Man, Devil May Cry, and Dead Rising. Dead Rising I don't think is much of a relevant franchise anymore. Devil May Cry is cool, but it is what it is, and Mega Man hasn't been what it was pretty much for a long time. So essentially what they're saying here is that yes, Resident Evil 4 Remake is going to have a bulk amount of sales, but they also allude that the most recent release of Monster Hunter Rise on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC Windows is also going to help them boost these numbers to record-breaking profits. So that's the first part of this entire news, that they are expecting a lot of people to check out the game on Game Pass, and of course, a lot, which is all baked into sales. I've said this multiple times. If you just boot up the game on Game Pass just once on whichever Xbox console you have, if you have Game Pass, that counts as a sell. So that's how these kind of contracts are set up. And people who are going to be buying the game on PlayStation, that's also going to count on sales. The most interesting part of this report, of course, falls into what they are projecting heading into 2023's fiscal year. So this will start on April 1st of 2023, heading into March 30th of 2024. So pretty much the next year. And what they are saying here is that not only are they projecting record-breaking sales for this year, which of course ends in just about 2 months, but record-breaking sales will be topped heading into 2024. And if you start to look at the bigger picture here, Capcom as of right now hasn't necessarily revealed massive, really over-the-top games that we know of are set to release for the rest of 2023, which would not include Resident Evil 4 because that is part of this specific fiscal year. Again, that releases in March 24th. So that's still part of just this fiscal year's, not next. They haven't necessarily revealed anything over the top. Now, of course, we know that they have Street Fighter 6 that is set to release, I believe, somewhere in the summer. I believe that's when that's set to release. We know that Exoprimal is releasing somewhere after that, I believe, somewhere in the fall. I believe that's the release date window for that game, if I'm correct. And then the vagueness of Pragmata, that game that with the weird space girl and the weird see-through cat and all of that. You should be seeing some trailers there. If you don't remember what the hell Pragmata is, a lot of people don't. That game was supposed to be releasing in 2022, I think. Then it got delayed to 2023. It wouldn't necessarily surprise me if it gets delayed to 2024. Like that game is just a vague notion of an idea. We don't necessarily know what that is. So if Capcom is saying that Exoprimal, Pragmata, and Street Fighter 6, and presumably, of course, Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak on Xbox and PlayStation are going to be carrying record-breaking sales on top of what they are already doing this year, that seems like a long stretch. That doesn't necessarily add up when it comes to just when you look at the bigger picture of their fiscal, yearly sales. That's just doesn't necessarily add up. So what you do end up having is the fact that, of course, we know that Ryoso Sugimoto, the producer for the Monster Hunter franchise, has already teased that on Tokyo Game Show they will be revealing something major for Monster Hunter. And of course, that means that presumably the next mainline game will be shown for the very first time. We just recently got confirmation that on E3 2023, that would be in June of this year, there will be no Nintendo, no PlayStation, no Xbox presentation of any kind at E3. So Capcom could take, the advantage and showcase something earlier than expected. But of course, as we've discussed before, Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak still not necessarily, released all their content at that point in time. And if there's supposed to be a 6th free title update, which has been heavily rumored, which will unify PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo Switch, and PC, that most likely will not have been out by the time, E3 takes place. So that essentially leaves Tokyo Game Show, exactly like Ryoso Sugimoto suggested, which takes place in September, for them to go ahead and reveal the next major game. They are not going to reveal a new game while they are still putting out content for the current one. That's just a bad business move. They're not necessarily going to do that. We've gone over this before. So essentially what this fiscal report is saying here is that they're expecting record-breaking sales that don't just necessarily come from Street Fighter 6, Exoprimal, and Pragmata, but something else major. And like I showed you guys before, their biggest IPs, Resident Evil already would have released this year. Most likely Resident Evil 4 Remake's Gold Edition or something like that would be releasing probably early 2024, but that wouldn't necessarily carry record-breaking sales because, again, the main game will sell more than the Gold Edition. We know that through this fiscal year's report, where I believe Resident Evil Village Gold Edition sold a little bit less than expected. But it released on October 28th of 2022, and it didn't necessarily break any records or anything like that. It was just good, but not necessarily great. And what else could it possibly mean other than the fact that, of course, a new Monster Hunter game would have to release before April of 2024. So this is what I think the biggest takeaway is. Yes, the game could end up being revealed in September in Tokyo Game Show, but I think the most interesting takeaway here is that it would actually end up releasing before their fiscal report of 2023 ends, which is March 30th, 2024. That is the biggest takeaway out of all of this. They are expecting record-breaking sales for next year, not just this year, but also that a major title will have to carry the game, their sales, and it wouldn't necessarily just be on the back of Street Fighter. Now, of course, they could have something completely unexpected out of nowhere, pull out like something completely, that wouldn't necessarily anyone would know. But it seems to me, and anyone who's paying attention to these kind of numbers and stuff, seems to me like the next mainline Monster Hunter game could potentially go ahead and drop before March 30th of 2024. And I think that is massive, because at the end of the day, that would have been essentially 3 years since Rise originally launched. PlayStation and Xbox players have been playing Rise and Sunbreak for a little bit of around a year or less than a year at that point in time, a little bit over a year. And essentially, players have kind of gotten bored. They've gotten tired with the content. They have already been teasing and potentially showing a trailer or two for the next mainline game. And of course, that is going to carry a lot of weight, a lot of hype. the brand new fiscal year for them, so a lot of things could be expected. So that is where we are right now on this. Of course, there's a lot of speculation behind all of that, but based on a lot of people's suggestions, this seems to be what is going to be happening. And of course, the biggest clear tell is going to be if we end up getting a 6 free title update. We're going to end up finding about that. I don't necessarily think within the next presentation that we're getting, in just a few days, but I think soon after that, we're going to end up getting that confirmation. If it happens, then maybe this is all just smoke and rumors and expectations kind of gone haywire, but it could potentially also mean that things are about to get a little bit hectic with a brand new, specifically a brand new generation game coming sooner than expected. If you're brand new to my channel, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, hit the bell to receive notifications when the videos go up, and as always, thank you so much for watching. See ya!